How's it going? Welcome back to Dylan Pickups blog. So today I'm just going to go over a few questions. Over the last couple weeks of doing this, we've had a few people write in some questions and want to know some clarification on some things, maybe a few more little details on some stuff. So I thought I would put a little, not an FAQ thing, but every couple weeks, if you've got a bunch of questions, then I'll just do one of these videos that just kind of adds to maybe some of that stuff we just talked about, and just some quick answers. So let's talk about a few of those things now. Alright, so one of the questions is that people had, actually a few people wrote into us asking about different ways to hook up a humbucker and what happens when you do various things, because we have 4 wires on a quality made humbucker. So let's talk about that real briefly. So the normal way is, and I am omitting all the colors because every brand is different and you got to look at your documentation for your brand of pickup to know what it is. So we're going to omit the colors and just talk about the pickup itself. You can treat it as 2 separate pickups for a lot of different wiring schemes, okay? So basically you've got one coil here and one coil here. Now the normal way is to hook up these 2 finishes so that the signal comes in, goes out, goes back in, and comes back out, and then these 2 start wires get hooked up to the guitar. The common question we have a lot of times is, I thought that you were supposed to hook up start to finish to start to finish. Do not do that. If you do that, you'll take the noise from one coil, add it to the noise of the other coil, and you'll get all kinds of buzz and hum. So don't do that. The other question we have is, what is this parallel thing with humbuckers? Well, you can actually treat these as excuse me, you can actually treat these as 2 separate pickups, and you can have a setting in your guitar where these are actually in parallel. So this would basically just be one pickup hooked up to the guitar and another pickup hooked up to the guitar through a switch. It's a very cool tone. It's not quite exactly like a single coil. It's a little bit less power than a normal humbucker, but it's got some nice clarity to it, and it is also hum canceling because of the action of the magnet in between. So that is a very cool thing. The other thing that people ask about is out of phase. You can hook up a humbucker out of phase with itself, but here's the interesting thing about it. When we discussed phasing, there was this talk about the closer 2 frequencies are together, the more they cancel each other out when they're out of phase. So what this means is, if you have a Stratocaster and you have 3 pickups and they are, a distance apart, and this one is out of phase with this one, then the string read along the string, the frequencies are going to be different enough. That's why they don't cancel each other out, okay? Totally. The closer the pickup is together to the other one that it's out of phase with, the more frequencies, because the more similar they are going to cancel out. That being said, if you choose to hook up a humbucker out of phase with itself, since it's only a 1/2 inch apart, it will be very, very thin and almost impossible to hear. So you can do it, but it's very, 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 very thin, and most people don't want to do that. So there's a couple of basic things about humbucker hookup. Okay, another question we got this last couple weeks is about pickup height adjustment. Now, this is going to speak specifically to individual pole or magnet heights in relation to the strings. So what somebody asked specifically was, if we're looking at a humbucker, well, if we're looking at a pickup crossways and the string's going this way, how do I accurately adjust for the magnet height of the strings? Well, first of all, we need to understand why certain pickups have like a staggered height to them in the first place. One reason is because back in like the traditional, like old school days, and I'm just gonna say it, old school days, like an early Telecaster and early Stratocasters, we know this, the string, the fretboard radius was like 7.5, okay? And we know the lower the number, the more arch on the fretboard radius there was, right? What that did is it made the strings go like this over the magnets. So one of the reasons for a staggered pull height was to make up for that so that it would read evenly over the pickup, and it would give you an accurate string read over the pickup. The other reason for that is, back in the old days before string technology was good like it is now, excuse me, they were using basically an evolution of light acoustic strings on electric guitars. So that meant that your low wound strings, here, 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 and here, but also this G was wound. So in order to get that extra mass to move of that G string, that pickup had to be, that pull piece had to be taller. But since we know that fat G strings, bulky G strings are no longer good, it's almost kind of a moot point. Now the only time it might actually be a real thing is if you're running a real old school, excuse me, real old school string radius, like, or fretboard radius like that. Then you might want to go with that still, depending on the strength of the pickups. If you're using a real low A2 or A3 pickup, and you're using real heavy strings, and you've got that 7.5-inch fretboard radius, or maybe if you just like the tone. Some people just like the tone. So that is the other thing, because it will make those middle strings, it'll make them bark. It'll make them a lot stronger. So that being said, let's move on to humbuckers, because that's actually where this question came from. Do I take my screw side coil and do I raise those up and make them that arch, like we talked about for this fretboard radius? So what I will tell you is, anything above about 9 inches, so 9, 9.5, 10, 12, and certainly 10 and 12, probably not even a big deal because of the technology of strings now and the way a guitar is set up. Just go back to my previous blog, set them, and if you want to tweak them a little bit, tweak them a little bit. But here's what I will mention to you. If you have a cover on your humbucker, that cover does not fit completely flat against those bobbins, which means that you already have to move your screw up above where the slug is. If you take your cover off, you'll see that the screw is sticking up, not that far, but I mean it's sticking up above the slug. When you raise your screw height, you're going to get high end, you're going to get more edge. The thing is going to be super edgy if you run that out of balance like that. So the more you raise your screws, the more edgy those particular strings are going to be, because you're upsetting the balance of the entire pickup. So just keep that in mind before you start messing with that screw side in relation to the slug side, especially if you have a cover, because it's already that much out of balance. Personally, when I build my own personal guitars, that's why I don't use covers on them, because I like that balance when there is no cover on it. So real quick, there was a few questions that we got over the last couple weeks. If you have more, please send them in and we will add them. We'll do blogs about them and keep this thing going. We appreciate the support we've had over the last couple weeks, and we'll see you tomorrow.